Few tales are told of Hades, whose very name inspires fear and penitence, reminding us of the inevitable fate which we all share. I, however, mean to tell you such a tale. Listen carefully.
There are very few game developers that in name alone inspire a high level of assumed quality. The likes of Naughty Dog, Rockstar, Santa Monica Studio, From Software, and arguably the newest of that group, CD Projekt Red, are just a few of the handful of names in this elite group of video game makers that by mere mention of their name alone breeds excitement. But I would argue the case for at least one more to join this illustrious club, Supergiant Games. Founded in 2009 by a couple of ex-EA devs, they have crafted hit after hit, starting with Bastion in 2011 and followed by Transistor and Pyre in 2014 and 2017 respectively. Each game was praised for its visuals, its music, and each of their differing gameplay styles all receiving really good praise alongside their storytelling in each game too. While another 3 years has passed since Pyre, and right on cue, Supergiant are at the door once more with their newest game, Hades, a roguelike dungeon crawler. But as ever, it's a departure from their previous works, more so than ever, however, as this game has been built with fans' input, as Supergiant has opted for their first foray into an early access model. But can they keep this run going? Will they make it 4 from 4? Will they ascend to the rank of God tier, or fall to the depths just like many before them? Welcome to Eat Sleep Game, my name is Luke and I have been playing Hades. For Hades, Supergiant opted to bring back their signature top-down perspective, which is rather useful in a game such as this, as it gives you such a good scope of the long line of enemies waiting to send you back home, head hung in shame. The art style is incredible. It has a great range of colours used effectively to not only make characters and the environments look great, but also to stand apart from everything. Each character is well thought out and has a great amount of detail to them, each being instantly recognisable, not only as the god or demon that they are, but Supergiant's indelible mark has been left on them, making each character unequivocally theirs. As mentioned, environments are great. Each new environment has a distinctive look and feel to them, which echoes throughout the entirety of the level, from the stoic stonework of Tartarus to the fiery depths of Asphodel and the luscious greenery of Elysium. I genuinely want little amiibo style figures of each and every single character from Hades. They all look incredible, and let's be honest, they're all hot as hell. Yes, especially Charon. Audio is much in the same vein as the visuals. All of it is pretty great, from the incredible soundtrack, which sounds like someone got the OSTs from both Doom and the Witcher series and smashed them together, getting you amped up for the fight ahead, to the more subtle bits of score used during the more relaxed downtimes like after a death or when you come across Charon and his shop. The soundtrack is used pretty perfectly, not only reflecting the current situation you find yourself in, but befitting the more prominent characters incredibly well. And that's without even mentioning Eurydice and Orpheus beautifully serenading the pits of hell at points throughout your journey. Voiceover is also really good here, again similar to the visuals. Each character has a voice that is instantly recognisable and fits each character almost perfectly, especially in the case of the dry and witty narrator, something Supergiant have found praise for in previous games.
The prince discover inadvertently the well-kept truth about his lineage. Entirely by chance, this did occur.
All movements, actions and attacks have an adequate and satisfying accompanying sound effect, all of which are weighted really well, matching the actual attack rather than going for a more one-size-fits-all approach that some other games of this style opt for. Deep down in the depths of hell, the prince of the underworld, Zagreus, is attempting to escape his father's domain in search for his real mother. But each time Prince Zagreus is defeated on his way, he gets pulled back down the river Styx and has to start from the very beginning, learning with each escape attempt, both in terms of foes, but also learning more about his allies and himself too. You would think that beating Hades and getting to the surface and finding your mother who you didn't even know about mere hours ago was the end of the game. However, it is only the beginning. Hades has a really clever twist that keeps the 10 successful escapes not only tolerable but compelling. It's only after your first successful escape that the real guts of the story starts to come through. The writing is just as witty and charming as it is deep and thoroughly well crafted. Not only is it worthwhile talking to every single single character you can, it's necessary. You will constantly learn new things and push each individual character's story forward. In some cases, finding they are linked to another character out in the underworld somewhere, and you will eventually be able to reunite some. I generally do not think I heard the same line of dialogue more than 2 or 3 times, and mostly that was just from petting Cerberus 1,000 times.
There's a good boy.
Do not let him manipulate you, Cerberus.
As I'm sure you would expect, there are a small pantheon of godly characters, both from the depths, like the king of the underworld and Zagreus' father Hades, Nyx, the goddess of night and substitute mother to Zagreus, as well as actual mother to the perpetually tired Hypnos, and his brother, the god of death Thanatos. Turns out that sleep isn't the cousin of death after all. You will also be in constant contact with the gods of Olympus, who offer their aid in your escape, granting you boons to help you defeat those who stand in your way. But Zeus, Poseidon, Athena and the like are not all they're cracked up to be, constantly belittling each other and even fighting over Zagreus' attention from time to time, perhaps showing that Olympus isn't the utopia that has been promised. It's a good job that they are unaware that Zagreus has no intention of joining them on Olympus and is just using them to help find his mother. Throughout the underworld, Zagreus will also come across a number of less godly characters, such as Achilles, for example, who is something of a mentor to the prince and has trained him since he was young. Each of these characters you find has an interesting backstory that will slowly unfold the more you talk to them, like how the lovely Sisyphus became intrinsically tied to his boulder, or how Jusa, the disembodied Gorgon head, defied her nature and became the housekeeper for Hades. Each of these characters and their accompanying stories are so charming and so well told that despite already knowing a fair amount of backstory to certain characters, it's still intriguing to see how it unfolds and how each of these characters have and continue to grow. There are a few romance options as well if you become close enough with certain characters, and again they're really well told. Some are rebuilding a past relationship and some are starting a new, but each one is genuinely redundant because you can't romance Charon. We will be together, my sweet boatman. Death plays a huge part in Hades. A roguelike dungeon crawler, the goal is to make it out of the underworld in a single run. And it can be brutally punishing, making it all the way to the end just to fall at the final hurdle and have to start all over again without the guarantee of the same sort of run with the same boons. However, death is subsequently also very rewarding too. You learn from each run you do, learn how to deal with enemies in certain situations better, learn what setup works for you, and you learn more about the world and characters around you. The underworld is constantly shifting and moving, so while you will see the same part of the underworld here and there, you will rarely see them in the same order, consistently keeping you on your toes and constantly evolving your plans. Sometimes you can rely on a certain NPC to refill your health along the way, other times you will have to tough it out and hope for the best, but there is always something to gain from a run, no matter how far you get. Through the depths of hell you will come across a plethora of items. All are again really well thought out, with every item you pick up serving a purpose. Items such as keys, for instance, which can be used to either unlock new weapons or upgrades for Zagreus. Gemstones for rebuilding and renovating hell. Darkness crystals are used to upgrade Zagreus, and nectar is given to NPCs to strengthen your bond. All of which are incredibly vital in one way or another to your escaping Hades and hell. However, unlike these, the other items that you are given as rewards for clearing a room, like the classic and ever useful health upgrade, which comes in the form of a centaur heart, weapon and ability buffs in the form of Daedalus hammers and palms of power, and the vast amounts of coin that you find and can spend at Charon's shop, will however be lost upon death, ensuring that each and every run is different and varied. As mentioned, giving nectar to NPCs strengthens your bond with them. However, giving nectar to these characters offers more than just an increased relationship. Most characters will offer something in return. Keepsakes work similarly to boons, but they can be swapped out before a run and after each boss, but you cannot equip one after swapping it out until the next run. No game in the system here. These range from increased health, attack or boon damage to receiving more coin and increased rarity on individual Olympians' boons. They can be extremely useful in certain situations, like Skelly's Tooth for instance, which revives you and restores some health points, or Eurydice's Evergreen Acorn, making you invulnerable for the first few hits against each boss. Keepsakes can also be upgraded simply by having them equipped on runs and completing a certain number of rooms, which then upgrades their efficiency. Of course, there are special items granted for beating each section's boss, from Titan Blood, which is used to upgrade the Infernal Arms once you have unlocked all 6, Diamonds, which are used to upgrade Hell itself through the House Contractor, Ambrosia, which is a gift like Nectar, but only for those that you have maxed out and developed a special bond with. These special bonds can lead to being granted a companion or legendary keepsake, like Rib, who enables you to summon Skelly to take the attention away from Zag, or Batty, who lets you call on Megara to swoop in with a devastating attack. While this is a handy addition, I actually think they could potentially take this a step further if they ever intended to add in co-op, and the unlockable companions could be the second character. It would be pretty hilarious to play as Skelly just being chased around the map, while the second player as Zagreus just takes everyone else out. Even after you have, for example, got enough keys to unlock all the weapons and all the upgrade tiers for Zagreus, they still hold value because you can take them to the Wretched Broker back in the House of Hades in exchange for other items, and that goes for any item that you have picked up that you keep hold of after death. You can either exchange them for other items, or they have an additional use, like the Darkness Crystals for example. You use them to upgrade Zagreus, but once you've done that, another purpose does reveal itself. It's really clever and really thought out. It means these additional runs that you keep doing are not pointless, and these items always remain relevant.
She's tough. Found you.
As mentioned earlier, you will consistently encounter the Olympian gods on your runs through the underworld, and as well as learning more about them, their history and relationships, they will give you their aid, granting a choice of 3 boons to temporarily help you through your escape attempt, some more temporary than others. Each god offers a certain type of perk, such as Zeus offering lightning based perks or Poseidon granting water based perks. Each god can also offer a call, which is a super move of sorts, such as Ares making you into an impervious Beyblade. But you can't just use these as freely as a regular boon. You must earn these by defeating enemies to build up your cool meter. You can build it up and use it a segment at a time, or you can wait to fill the entire meter and unleash the full might of the gods on your enemies. Boons come in different rarities, of course, and the more rare the better the boon, but that does depend on your playstyle. Personally, I preferred boons from Zeus, Ares and Athena, as Zeus's lightning attacks and cool do a good amount of damage. Ares can imbue your attacks with doom, which hit an enemy with additional damage after an attack, and Athena enables you to deflect, which is very handy when faced with a room full of ranged enemies. Of course, what video game is complete without a spot of fishing? Just like any other item in Hades, fish serve a purpose. After gaining the fishing rod, you will be able to take a little time at one of these sparkling points to cast. These fish are not just caught to fill up the codex, but like any other item in the game, you can exchange them, this time with the cook in the lounge kitchen, and he will give you gems, keys, coins, nectar and darkness in return. Speaking of codex, Achilles will give you his codex fairly early into the game, and this will fill out over time, giving you some interesting backstories and information on characters, which complement the stories nicely. You will also find information on enemies, areas and items which you have come across, explaining for instance why everyone is so obsessed with nectar. The codex also gives the backstory on all of the weapons available to Zagreus and how they came to be in his possession, adding to the backstories that will be uncovered of some darker times for Hades and his siblings. Speaking of weapons, there is a small armory that becomes available to Zag as he hacks and slashes his way through the underworld, offering a good amount of variation and differing ways to play. From his starting weapon, the Stygian blade, getting up close and personal and cutting through enemies, or keeping some distance like with the heart-seeking bow, and my personal favourite, the Eternal Spear, which offers the best of both worlds, letting you stab foes from a distance as well as throwing it to great effect. Other weapons include the Shield of Chaos, which you can throw around like an undying Captain America, the Twin Fists, which let you rock 'em sock 'em with your enemies, and the Adamant Rail, which allows you to do great damage at a distance. On the other hand, each weapon has its shortcomings too. The Eternal Spear doesn't cover much radius, leaving you open to attacks from your sides. The Heat-Seeking Bow can take time to draw an arrow. The Stygian Blade and Twin Fists mean you have to get very close to enemies to attack, which of course leaves you vulnerable to their attacks in return, and you have to stand still while shooting the Adamant Rail. A lot of Hades gameplay is getting the right balance of risk and reward, and knowing enemies and how best to use each weapon and boon. Do you go for a slower, more rangy weapon to keep your distance but leaves you open to ranged attacks? Or do you go for a quicker, more short range weapon that covers a bigger radius but puts you up close and personal with your enemies? Each of these weapons can be upgraded with Titan Blood, and each weapon also has a different variation called Aspects that can be unlocked through the story. Most offer a perk like increased damage and speed, or offer a new attack, but some take as much as they give, with some granting a more deadly attack at the cost of having a reduced health bar or taking more damage, once again making you weigh up the risk and the reward. After your first successful escape, you will find that once you get back home and attempt your next, you will have to choose modifiers to fill a heat gauge to progress, making each subsequent run with each unlockable weapon more challenging and rewarding. Each time you are successful with a pact, you must increase the heat gauge for that weapon. You will also eventually unlock challenge arenas in Erebus, which you can only enter if your heat gauge is high enough. In these challenge rooms, you must defeat all the enemies without being hit once, and you will receive your reward. However, should you fail, you'll get a lovely red onion for your troubles. Just like everything else in the game, enemies are all well designed and well thought out, all offering a different challenge, even those that are slight variations on other enemies like Inferno Bombers, Slam Dancers and Burn Flingers, all of which hurl bombs at you, but they all do it slightly differently, from the Burn Flingers just straight up throwing bombs at you, the Slam Dancers slamming a bomb down right next to you, and the Inferno Bomber being a mini boss variant that throws bombs and have a fiery effect afterwards. I very rarely was left frustrated by the enemies. They are often used in a complementary way and making sure you do not stick to one tactic, like having some heavy melee characters like the Bloodless or Bone Rakers mixed with some long range enemies like the aforementioned Burn Flingers or Spitters. The only time enemies genuinely frustrated me was in Styx in the caverns before finally confronting Hades, as this is where the poison enemies live. Crawlers are no real issue, they're tiny little one-hit kill rats, and while the gigantic vermin can be a bit of a pain when they leave a trail of poison, they are manageable. But there are two enemies here that infuriated me. Firstly, the Satyr cultists. They sit back and spit poison at you while you are busy dealing with other enemies, and the goddamn mini boss gigantic vermin who takes up so much space and spews poison almost everywhere, and has a bunch of bothers shooting off mines just when you find some safety. But on the other hand, King Vermin is hilarious. Oh, it's a tiny little mousy boy. Oh my god, get away from me, tiny demon. I played Hades on the Switch and generally didn't have too much trouble at all. Loading times could be a little long in the tooth, which when playing a game that can be as fast paced as Hades can feel like an eternity of waiting to get back into slaying foes. And I encountered some very minor environmental pop-in and the occasional frame rate dip when there was too much on screen at once. But in my 120 plus hours, I only experienced this a handful of times. Hades ran incredibly well. Let me be clear, I adore Hades, from the charm and excellent character work to the soundtrack and great core gameplay loop. But as the credits rolled, I felt a little underwhelmed by the ending. I felt like the game was preparing and warning me about a final epic encounter due to my continued perseverance to break out of the underworld, and that I'd have to finally face the consequences to my death dealing. But I got the exact opposite. Hades stepped aside and just let me stroll past him to be reunited once again with Persephone. And that was that. I felt certain that the Olympians were going to find out the truth, that you'd been using them for your own selfish means rather than to join them in the heavens, and that you would then incur their wrath. But after a relatively sleepless night, it all clicked into place for me. Hades is not a game about defiance or revenge. It's about love and relationship, from helping a number of side characters to reunite with their partners or family members who have drifted apart. Hades is all about facing and coming to terms with their past mistakes and being better, which is arguably no more evident than in the most wholesome character in the game, Sisyphus. He is a gentle soul with an appalling past and is an eternal punishment for it, and he has come to terms with that. He's accepted his lot and is living his best life. Well, not living, and I guess it would be his best afterlife, but you get what I mean. Beyond all the torment, hatred, and confrontation, Hades is about broken families, imperfect characters, and how it can all be fixed with communication and understanding. Hades is possibly the most cohesive game of the generation. Everything works incredibly well on its own, but put all together, it is somehow more than the sum of its phenomenal parts. After 120 hours, I am not done with this game. I want to unlock all of its secrets, reunite all of its characters, and spend eternity with Charon. And finally learn to play that damn lyre.